Have you ever noticed something strange? Some of the smartest people you know are not poor because they lack ability. They're not poor because they're lazy. They're not poor because the world is against them. They're poor because they wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait until they've thought through every possible outcome. And while they wait, someone else, someone less prepared, less intelligent, less careful, moves forward and wins. His name was David. He worked at a mid-sized marketing firm. Not a terrible job, not a dream job, just a job. The kind where you clock in, do decent work, and clock out. The kind where people say, good job, but never, we couldn't do this without you. David was smart. Everyone knew it. In meetings, he'd catch details others missed. He'd see problems 3 steps ahead. His reports were thorough. His analysis was sharp. But when promotion time came, it went to Marcus, a guy who talked more, delivered less, but always seemed to be in the right room at the right time. David told himself it didn't matter. He told himself he was playing the long game. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet and the glow of his laptop was the only light, he'd open a dozen browser tabs, business ideas, investment strategies, skill courses. He'd read, he'd research, he'd take notes. Then he'd close the laptop and go to bed. Tomorrow, he'd think, when I know more, when I'm ready. David had a folder on his desktop called Projects. Inside were 15 half-written business plans, 3 website mock-ups, 2 YouTube channel ideas with scripted videos never filmed, a Kindle draft at 8,000 words that hadn't been touched in 4 months. He told himself he was being strategic, that rushing in without a plan was foolish, that smart people don't just throw things at the wall, but the truth he didn't want to admit, was that he was afraid. Not afraid of failure exactly, afraid of looking foolish, afraid of launching something mediocre, afraid of his former college roommate seeing his half-baked idea on LinkedIn and judging him, afraid of being visible and imperfect. So he prepared, he researched, he refined, and nothing launched. One evening, David scrolled through social media and saw an old high school classmate, someone he used to help with homework, announcing their second product launch. The first one had been clunky, barely functional, but it sold, and now they were scaling. David stared at the post. He thought, I could have built something better. He thought, why didn't I start 2 years ago when I had the same idea? He thought, what is wrong with me? The next Monday during a meeting, David had an idea, a good one, a tweak to their client strategy that could save weeks of work. He opened his mouth to share it, then stopped. What if it's not as good as I think? What if I'm missing something obvious? What if they shoot it down? He stayed quiet. 15 minutes later, Marcus said almost the same thing. Rougher, less thought through. But he said it. The boss loved it. David went home that night and sat in his car for 20 minutes before going inside. Here's what David was starting to realize, even if he couldn't put it into words yet. His intelligence was not an advantage. It was a cage. Smart people see too many possibilities. They see 10 ways something could fail. They see all the gaps in their knowledge. They see the people who are better, faster, more connected. And because they see all of this, they freeze. Average people, they see one path. They take it. If it doesn't work, they adjust. But they move. David had spent years mistaking overthinking for strategy. He thought waiting for certainty was wisdom. But certainty never comes. The right time doesn't exist. And while he was sharpening his tools, other people were building. The shift didn't happen all at once. It started with something small, something almost embarrassing. David was at a coffee shop waiting for his order. A guy next to him was on a call, clearly pitching something. His pitch was clumsy. He stumbled over his words. At one point he said, 7 times in 30 seconds. But he was doing it. He was on the call. He was trying. David realized, that guy is further ahead than me. Not because he's smarter, not because his idea is better, but because he's in the game. David made a decision that night. He opened the folder called Projects. He looked at all 15 ideas, and he picked one, not the best one, not the most profitable one, the one that scared him the least. A simple newsletter, sharing lessons from books on decision-making and psychology, something he could write in 2 hours a week. He didn't build a fancy website. He didn't design a logo. He didn't wait until he had 20 articles written. He wrote one. He sent it to 37 people, mostly friends, some strangers from an online forum. It felt awkward. It felt small. It felt like it didn't matter. But it existed. The first issue had 2 typos. One subscriber replied to say the formatting was broken on mobile. Another unsubscribed immediately. David's instinct was to stop, to say, "See, I wasn't ready." But instead, he fixed the formatting. He wrote another issue, then another. By issue 6, someone he didn't know shared it. By issue 12, he had 200 subscribers. By issue 20, a small business reached out asking if he did consulting. He didn't. But he said yes anyway. That consulting gig paid $1,500, more than he'd ever made outside his salary, not because the work was revolutionary, but because he'd done something. He'd been visible. He'd been imperfect and kept going. Months passed. David still had his job, but now he had something else. Momentum. The newsletter became a podcast. The podcast led to a speaking gig. The speaking gig led to a second client, then a third. None of it was perfect. Some weeks he wanted to quit. Some episodes were flat. Some pitches got rejected. But he didn't stop. And slowly, so slowly, he almost didn't notice, things changed. Not because he got smarter. He was always smart. But because he stopped waiting for permission. He stopped waiting for certainty. He stopped letting his intelligence talk him out of action. Here's the truth David learned. And it's the truth you need to hear. Smart people stay poor because they think their way out of action. They believe that if they just read one more book, take one more course, wait one more month, then they'll be ready. But ready is a lie. Ready is a trick your fear plays on you. Wealth doesn't follow the smartest person in the room. It follows the person who moves, the person who launches the imperfect thing, the person who risks looking foolish. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a first step. You don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to start. And you don't need to wait until you're fearless. You just need to move despite the fear.